These 10 players are soaring up my rest of season rankings. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the biggest risers from my preseason, draft rankings back in August to now, excluding any of the players that we talked about in waivers this week. Our rest of season rankings should give you guys a guide to who's undervalued right now, who's a good buy low candidate, which players are valued in the same tier, and those rankings are now live on the site and for our Underdog Fantasy code users. We will send out a mass email in a couple hours to give you guys access to that. So if you guys enjoyed at any point, if you feel like you get some value from this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Now let's get into it. Of course, you guys might have noticed that I have the Rondé Barber hanging loud and proud this week because we are officially facing the Philadelphia Eagles, and I had to shout out one of the greatest Buccaneers to ever do it, 2023 Pro Football Hall of Famer, my favorite Buccaneer of all time, although Mike Evans making a definite case to be up there as well. But we are going to get into the first guy here. The top 10 players soaring up my rankings, skyrocketing up my rankings. This first guy is Kyren Williams, who has all of a sudden become an absolute workhorse in Los Angeles with Cam Akers expected to be out of the picture very soon. We got reports that a couple teams are interested in trading for him. Kyren Williams is a smaller running back. He's like 195, 200 pounds. So if you guys have Kyren Williams, I would maybe be looking to sell him. But it is undeniable what he's done so far. Not sure he's going to hold up to this kind of workload, but this workload is ridiculous. 97% of the snaps this past week, 78% of the carries, 80% of the routes, 18% target share. This guy's getting everything under the sun inside the 5 attempts, short down and distance, long down and distance, 2-minute drill. And of course, we know this Rams offense is playing at a higher level than we all initially anticipated. All of their young players are stepping up, and it's very clear that Kyren Williams can play. With each one of these guys, I'll try and highlight how I actually value them rest of the season to give you guys a sneak peek. But with Kyren Williams, this is a guy that's like a borderline RB2 for the rest of the year. You could make the argument you'd rather have Kyren Williams than Isaiah Pacheco, Alexander Mattison, Damian Pierce, Najee Harris, James Conner. Like, he's legitimately in that conversation. Again, I'm probably selling high on him after these first 2 games if I can and trying to get up to a more secure running back, but it's undeniable what he's done so far. So Kyren Williams definitely on the rise for me in my rankings. Another guy who I was already high on coming into the season, even higher on this guy now, is Jordan Addison, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. When you're a rookie wide receiver, how do you make an impact when you're getting eased in to the lineup? Because most of the time, rookie wide receivers don't come out gangbusters week 1, command 95% of their team's routes and a 25% target share. We just don't typically see that happening, which is why Puka Nacua is kind of doing some crazy shit right now. But how about you catch a bomb touchdown in each of your first 2 games? Because that is what Jordan Addison has done so far for the Minnesota Vikings. We've seen that kind of play out in his usage so far. He only had 66% of the routes in week 1. That number jumps up to 78% in week 2. By week 4, week 5, we're talking about a guy that should be on the field over KJ Osborne 90-95% of the time. And we know with Justin Jefferson, he is going to demand a lot of attention. He's going to demand a lot of coverage. And Jordan Addison's getting these high leverage targets, these 16, 19 ADOT targets that he's getting these first 2 games. Once the usage surpasses KJ Osborne, which if Addison keeps playing like this, you can expect that to be sooner rather than later, I think we're actually going to see him get a little bit more designed work, a little bit more shorter targets, work over the middle of the field. As I tweeted when it happened, Jordan Addison might be walking proof that the combine doesn't mean shit, because everybody was ready to give up on this guy after a poor combine performance, and he has scorched 2 of the best secondaries in the league, in my opinion, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles, already in his first 2 games. So kid can just flat out ball, and I'm not in the business of selling young players who get out to this kind of a hot start through the first 2 games of their career. The Vikings are first in neutral pass rate through the first 2 games. So this is a team that wants to throw the ball. They have the necessary targets available. Justin Jefferson can't do everything, although he will try and do so. And Kirk Cousins in this Vikings defense are going to be reasons why this team does not stop throwing, and Jordan Addison is a big part of that puzzle. So Rachaad White is another guy that is moving up my rankings, and I will admit it, even as a Buccaneers fan, I'm still skeptical of Rachaad White, the talent, but he is off to a very, very good start so far, especially his workload. His workload is absolutely immaculate. It is one of the best in the entire NFL. He's getting over, 70% of his team snaps. He's getting 55%, 70% of the routes. Baker Mayfield has shown that he's willing to check down to his running backs, and Rachaad White is getting the long down and distance and 2-minute drill work, which is really important because if this team starts playing better teams, they're not going to play the Vikings and Bears every week. Rachaad White could have a chance to have 5, 6, 7 targets a game if they're in some negative game scripts, and Baker in this offense actually look relatively good. So it looks like he's actually going to have some legitimate goal line opportunities, some legitimate red zone opportunities, and I get it. The Bears and the Vikings are not the best litmus test for how we expect this offense to be going forward because those two defenses, for my money, are probably two of the worst defenses in the league. But Rachaad White forced 6 missed tackles this past week. He had a top 8 PPR performance in fantasy, and currently he's a top 6 graded back by Pro Football Focus. So I am still willing to sell high on Rachaad White if somebody's willing to give you top 15, top 10 running back price tags, and you can go buy low on Josh Jacobs or Travis Etienne or somebody like that using Rachaad White plus a piece. I'm definitely going to do that, but he is still a clear mid running back 2 for me rest of the season given the workload that he's seeing. Another guy who's a clear mid running back 2 for me rest of the season is James Cook. James Cook in his first 2 games so far has had 18 opportunities, with 6 of them being targets against the Jets in week 1, and then 21 opportunities this past week against the Raiders, with 4 of those being targets. He had 160 total yards in his second game ever as the starting back for this team. He's not a workhorse, but to be honest, I don't really want him to be because James Cook is an undersized running back, and I think this type of usage from this type of offense, this type of quarterback, and the game environment that the Buffalo Bills are going to be in each and every week is enough for James Cook to be probably a low-end RB1, if not a high-end RB2. So really all I need out of James Cook is to be a 15 to 20 opportunity per game running back, get 5 or 6 targets, get 4 targets a game, and he doesn't need to be a workhorse. Yeah, it's going to be annoying when Josh Allen or Latavius Murray or Damian Harris snipes him on a goal line carry, and this guy hasn't scored a touchdown yet, but I am very impressed with what I've seen from James Cook, both from a on-field talent level standpoint and from the workload that he's receiving. All I need is 60% of the snaps, give me the majority of the carries, give me most of the routes and most of the 2-minute drill snaps, which we saw actually spike forward this past week. That's all you need for James Cook. He can be a mid RB2, and I would feel really, really good if I went hero RB or something like that, and James Cook was the second running back I took in like the 7th or the 8th round, because I do think we're getting a pretty good performance out of James Cook so far. So the next guy that is soaring up my rankings right now is Brian Robinson. And Brian Robinson, going into drafts, I believe I called him the discount Najee Harris at one point because he's a big physical back just like Najee Harris is, only he can actually break contact. He can actually make people miss, and he's actually good at football because Najee Harris is clearly not that good. Brian Robinson, his ceiling will always be limited to some degree because Antonio Gibson works in, about 40% of the time. He's going to get, most of the long down and distance 2-minute drill kind of snaps, but Brian Robinson gets virtually all of the carries. What we've seen so far is that he's pretty much dominated the groundwork. He does get some receiving work, 30, 40% of the team's routes, a couple design plays, design screen passes here and there. And this guy is a mainstay in the red zone. Antonio Gibson's fumbling issues that have been a problem for a number of years now are probably going to keep him off the field altogether anytime that this team is in the red zone. And it looks like this offense is actually going to be functional. Sam Howell's playing pretty well. Eric Bieniemy has this thing rolling so far, and I've been impressed with what I've seen from everybody in this offense, let alone, Dotson and Terry McLaurin, who we know can play, but Howell and the running game have been quite good as well. So with Brian Robinson, I think you got a rest of season RB2 on your hands. I think this is a guy that you can expect 13 to 15 PPR points per game, and that's going to be really good for you if you guys have a 0 RB build, or if you have, hero RB build and you didn't draft a second running back until the 8th or the 9th round, because Brian Robinson can be a legitimate contender with a lot of the running backs that were taken in the 3rd, 4th round, hence why we were avoiding those dead zone backs. And I wouldn't be shocked if Brian Robinson outscored Joe Mixon, outscored Najee Harris, outscored Aaron Jones and Miles Sanders and all these guys that went way, way ahead of him in drafts, and that's why we were going after guys like this. So definitely excited about what Brian Robinson can do for the rest of the season. These next 2 guys I can kind of group together because they play for the same team, Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr. Speaking of players that can play, man, holy crap, Anthony Richardson has played super well so far, especially considering what he was coming out of Florida. He has 3 rushing touchdowns in like 5.5 quarters so far because he didn't even finish the game in week 2 because he suffered a concussion. I'm not overly concerned about that long term. They are not easing this dude in whatsoever, and I think that speaks a lot to what Shane Steichen has done there and why Jalen Hurts was able to develop under Shane Steichen as well. The pace of play of the Indianapolis Colts offense is currently number 1 in the NFL, and you would think a team without their starting running back, Jonathan Taylor, holding out right now, a team with a rookie quarterback who was raw coming out of school, they would be a slow-paced offense, rely on their defense, probably not try and do too much and put their quarterback in harm's way, but instead they've designed the offense completely around him. They're getting the ball out quick. Michael Pittman Jr. has a bit of a lower ADOT than we typically see out of him. Josh Downs getting a number of targets. Anthony Richardson is working on the move. He's running the ball. He's working outside the pocket, and that is exactly what works for this offense, and I'm really, really excited to watch this team because they were a complete train wreck, a complete eyesore with Matt Ryan last year, and both Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr., who I can just transition to right now, are rising up my rankings because they've been a huge beneficiary of the coaching change. Everyone was so certain that Michael Pittman was going to be mid this year. Everybody was like, I don't want, the number one receiver for a rookie quarterback. It's a bad offense, blah, blah, blah. But we're kind of seeing proof that Frank Reich might not just be that good of a coach, right? We're seeing it in Carolina right now that, Bryce Young is struggling and the whole offense in Carolina isn't moving the ball. And look what's happening in Indianapolis as a result of Frank Reich being gone and Shane Steichen coming in. So I'm quite excited about both of these guys. Again, with Michael Pittman, I would still potentially try and sell high on him because he's had some good weeks in a row now. But I am very encouraged by his 32% target share. The fact that his catchable target rate is up at 82% because they're getting him targets close to the line of scrimmage. They're getting him targets in the screen game and things of that nature. So both of these guys definitely on the rise for me rest of the season. Another guy that is on the rise for me rest of the season, somebody that I wasn't really high on coming into the year, and I'm probably going to have to eat some crow a little bit, is Keenan Allen. And I still have the same pre-draft bias that I have on Keenan Allen, is that I don't love holding this guy for the entire season because he's an older player. The second he gets banged up, he might be out for a number of weeks. It's a long season, and I think football is a young man's game. I always have. But anytime this guy's on the field, man, he is going to be awesome. His pace numbers over the last 11 healthy games that he's played going back to last year are 178 targets, 124 receptions, 1,426 yards, and 9 touchdowns. This guy has been absolutely outstanding. He has over 180 yards and almost 20 targets through 2 games. We know that Justin Herbert's going to be able to move the ball. Their offensive line is playing so much better than they did last year, and it's allowing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to actually get some targets downfield. And Austin Eckler will probably be out for another couple weeks too, so that opens up some more targets for the wide receiver position. We were a little worried after week 1 that the Chargers weren't going to throw the ball as much as we anticipated because they ran really run heavy in Miami against the Dolphins in week 1, but in week 2 the game script kind of returned to their passing ways, and we kind of saw who they are. They want to throw the ball. They threw it a lot against Tennessee, and the ground game wasn't nearly as effective as it was, but it's encouraging knowing that they can kind of win in multiple ways because for the longest time it was just, Justin Herbert, all he has to do is throw. Even their running back, Austin Eckler, his best attribute is as a receiving back, but they can actually run the ball a little bit more, and that's going to keep the offense on schedule, which is good for Keenan Allen, and it's good for Mike Williams, who's also sliding up my rankings a little bit as well. But moving on to the next guy on this list who is soaring up my rankings, another rookie wide receiver. It is not Puka Nacua. I just avoided talking about him in this video because everybody talks about him all the time, but very obviously he is going up my rankings a lot as well. But Zay Flowers is the guy that I'm actually going to break down in this video because he came back down to earth this past week. I think we all kind of anticipated that to some degree, but he scorched the earth in week 1, right? 50% target share. Here's the good news. The Ravens offense was much better in week 2. Even though Zay Flowers didn't nearly have the game that he had in week 1, the whole offensive grade went from a 64.6 on PFF to a 75. So Lamar Jackson played better. Mark Andrews coming back makes this offense a lot better. Odell Beckham Jr. and Rachaad Bateman are still working their way back from injury, and Beckham got a little banged up in this game, but their offensive line was better. Their running game was better. This kid is the best player on this offense not named Mark Andrews or Lamar Jackson, and he's had 18 opportunities to touch the ball over the first 2 games of his career, and he's dropped over 150 yards on those 2 opportunities. So rest of season, this is a guy that I think has wide receiver 3 written all over him, with wide receiver 2, potentially even wide receiver 1 upside, given the fact that he's a rookie, and if this Ravens offense really starts firing, we could see like a Devontae Smith caliber season out of Zay Flowers as a rookie. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that Mark Andrews can be one of the best tight ends in fantasy, and Lamar Jackson can still support Zay Flowers because they're also throwing the ball a lot more than we have seen them do with Greg Roman, and that's something that we kind of expected coming into the year, especially now that their starting running back J.K. Dobbins is out for the season. So Zay Flowers, a guy that, if people are a little bit, week 1 was a mirage, Mark Andrews was, out for that game, and that's why he got so many targets. So if people in your league are semi not bought into Zay Flowers, trust me, they should be based on what he's done in the first 2 games. And even though Mark Andrews is back, it's still wheels up for Zay Flowers rest of the season as a wide receiver 3 at minimum. And finally, the last guy that I'm going to talk about in this video is Nico Collins, another guy that is completely scorching up my rankings right now. The Texans offense ranks 4th in pace of play right now. CJ Stroud has been very impressive through 2 games, especially considering that he doesn't have the same talent level that he had at Ohio State, right? We can name 5 first-round receivers that he had on his offense there when he was the quarterback. And also, this Texans offense's young players are stepping up, and Nico Collins is the perfect example right now. As a fast-paced, up-tempo, throwing the ball offense, we didn't expect to see Nico Collins look this good. We didn't expect to see Robert Woods actually making contributions. We didn't expect to see Tank Dell being a breakout star for week 2. This Texans offense needed their young players to step up, especially in the absence of their offensive line injuries and the fact that Dameon Pierce isn't playing that well. And I would say that Nico Collins posting 226 yards and 20 targets definitely qualifies as their young guys stepping up. I'm not really concerned that now there's suddenly a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. Nico Collins is the wide receiver 1 here. He is the alpha, and he is the one getting the high value targets as well, the downfield shots, the air yards. He has nearly 50% of the Texans' air yards right now. The way that Nico Collins continues playing like this is CJ Stroud continuing to gain confidence. So I hope that Tank Dell is a player. I hope that Robert Woods continues to eat into targets. I hope that Dameon Pierce can get going, because all of that means better things for the quarterback, especially when the offensive line gets healthier. So Nico Collins, a guy that I think is a borderline top 30 wide receiver rest of season. I think you could reasonably make the argument that you would take Nico Collins over Terry McLaurin, or that you would take him over DeAndre Hopkins rest of season, because this guy is playing at a very, very high level. He's a young player. He's an ascending player, and this offense has been a pleasant surprise so far this season in the first 2 games. So if you guys enjoyed this video, like I said, if you got some value from it, go down below, leave a like. It really helps us out, and it takes you guys 2 seconds. Really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if this is the first time you're checking us out, or if you've watched our videos before but haven't taken the plunge. About 75-80% of you guys that watch these videos don't hit the subscribe button. It's completely free to do so. You can always unsubscribe later. And of course, if you want our rest of season rankings so that you know, should I trade this player for that player? Or should I, trade this player plus this player for that player? Or, who's better rest of season? That will all be available in our rest of season rankings. The link will be down below in the pinned comment and in the description for that. You can get that on our site, flockfantasy.com/FSE for 30% off. Or if you want to get it for free, you can sign up on Underdog Fantasy using $10 as a minimum deposit. You'll get 100% back on what you put in. You'll also get our weekly rankings and our rest of season rankings as a free gift for doing that. And we will send out the email blast to our Underdog code users this year in a few hours after this video is live. So you guys will have access to our weekly rankings, our rest of season rankings by one of those 2 ways, either going onto our site or signing up and depositing on Underdog Fantasy. So if you're interested in that, link down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.